everybody, welcome back to another video. Now, I was actually anticipating 2 sweeps. We got 1 sweep and a gentleman's sweep. I also brought the basketball for some basketball tapping. I'll do it occasionally throughout the video, not the whole time. Also, I had this genius idea, one I can't believe I didn't think of before, to have some 2K gameplay that I can throw in periodically over the course of this video, so you guys don't just have to sit here and stare at me the whole time. Although I do wonder how many people watching these videos are actively watching the video, since it's an ASMR video. Me personally, I put an ASMR video on my phone. I have my headphones on, and then I turn my phone upside down and lay down. So I don't know. I'd be interested to know that, in fact. But our conference finals are over, and I think for the most part, I just want to talk broadly here. And I think it's because I honestly see the situation in both of these conferences very similarly, the way that these series went in both the East and the West. I see a lot of parallels, and I kind of think that the same things happened in both conference finals. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Timberwolves Mavericks series, just because that is the series I personally watched more of, just because it was easier for me to watch it. But what this really felt like to me, particularly with the Timberwolves, the Pacers had a few more injury issues. Halliburton obviously missed some time, and they were dealing with some injury issues that the Timberwolves did not deal with. But it felt like the youth, the inexperience of the team, and not being adjusted to playing as many games played a big factor in both these losses. There's actually a quote by Anthony Edwards. He said, "Now I know in order for me to be dominant, I've got to train like I'm going to go deep into the playoffs. Now that I know what it takes, I'll be ready." And I think these entire Western Conference Finals, to speak specifically about Anthony Edwards, he did look tired. I made a couple notes. I made this note during Game 4, which honestly I felt like the Mavericks should have won Game 4. Lively being out ended up being a lot more costly than I think a lot of people expected. His importance to this team. But I noted in Game 4, Anthony Edwards looked tired early in the third quarter. And one particular possession I noted in the third quarter, he had a wide open lane, and he passed out to the perimeter instead, which really was not indicative of his game up to that point. He'd been very aggressive attacking the rim, and in the fourth quarter of pretty much every game in this series, funnily enough, except for Game 5. Game 5 I felt like was Anthony Edwards' best game, at least from an eye test. I don't have the stats in front of me. But the first 4 games in this series, the fourth quarter, I felt like Anthony Edwards kind of disappeared a little bit. And it didn't help that also he was not getting time to sit, I think. Did I make a note of that? Yeah, so I don't know. I don't have the time that I wrote this, but I said that Anthony Edwards has not sat yet in the second half, and I wrote that at some point in the fourth quarter. So you have a young guy, only 22 years old. He's never played this many games in a season before. He's already clearly struggling physically at certain points. In the first handful of games, he had a few really bad turnovers. Late in the fourth quarter, just missing shots, things like that. But that quote from him talking about he needs to prepare his body to play deep into the playoffs, it's a totally different animal. Especially, if you think about it, during the regular season, you can kind of afford to take some possessions off. Your bench rotation is deeper. More guys, you can sit a few more minutes because one loss here or there on the, isn't going to matter too much. But in the playoffs, you're facing the same team. They're figuring you out. You're figuring them out. You need to be fully engaged on both sides of the ball. It's just a completely different animal. It takes more out of you. But even with that, he still had a really good playoffs. He averaged 27.6 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, 6.5 assists per game through the playoffs. Now in the Western Conference Finals specifically, he did have some really inefficient games. Even that very last game against Denver, he was pretty inefficient. And I think that just comes from tired legs, things like that. But the more concerning one, to me personally, is Karl Anthony Towns. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but through the first 3 games of this series, when they lost 3 games in a row, I think Karl Anthony Towns was shooting more. I think he shot more than 40 3-pointers and made fewer than 10 of them. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it's something like that. And he was just continuing to shoot and shoot and shoot from behind the arc, and it just wasn't going in. And I felt like if Karl Anthony Towns even shot just an average percentage, or maybe stopped shooting the 3 in general in those first few games, this could have been a series. This wouldn't have been a gentleman's sweep, and the Minnesota Timberwolves might be playing another game in 2 days. If not, they maybe would be up in this series or something. But ultimately, Gobert really also did not look himself in this series, and I've seen a lot of people talk like, oh, Gobert was exposed. Kendrick Perkins said some stupid thing like, oh, I'm gonna give up my vote. I'm ashamed I ever voted this guy DPOY. No, he's still an amazing defender. Doesn't matter if Luka's getting shots off over him. Like, he'll get shots off over anybody. Luka gets shots off over Draymond. He would definitely get shots off over prime Kendrick Perkins. Like, give me any defender. I don't care if it's Dikembe Mutombo. Luka will get a step back 3 on him. And if he doesn't, he's gonna get 3 free throws. Like, come on now, let's be realistic. But I think, for me, it's really the inefficiency of Cat and Anthony Edwards through those first 3 games. And I think with Anthony Edwards, it's a bit more forgivable because he hasn't been in the league as long. But with Cat, he's been not here, but he's been in the NBA this long, and now there's all this stuff, like Cat saying he hopes he can come back for a 10th year. And I see a lot of Timberwolves fans talking about trading Cat. And I think after the way this season ended, I can understand the inclination to want to do that. I personally feel like that would be a huge mistake. I think if you trade Karl Anthony Towns and you're relying on Gobert as your main big, maybe Naz Reid at the 4 permanently, I don't think this team is as effective. Yes, Cat's shot was not falling in the Western Conference Final, but his shooting and his ability to, score at 3 levels opens up that offense, and you saw it in Game 5. Game 5, even though they lost, Cat was hitting his shots. Game 4 as well. He was making his shots, which opened up the lanes to allow Anthony Edwards to attack. Those guys are instrumental in each other's success, and I think, even though I understand the inclination to want to trade Karl Anthony Towns, I feel like the team will be worse off if they do so. And ultimately, on the other side, the Dallas Mavericks, Kyrie and Luka in the 4th quarter, in contrast to, Anthony Edwards and some of the other guys. Those are 2 extremely clutch players. At the end of the game, they're gonna get you big buckets. The lights are not too bright. And we saw that even in the Game 4. Game 4, Luka hit that big shot at, in the dying seconds of the game. And then there's also like, oh, maybe they can come back and tie it in the overtime. Ultimately, it didn't happen. But he still hit that big shot, and he had those big moments. Kyrie as well. And now the big thing, Maxi Kleber, he was out, he came back. He looked really bad in Game 4 and 5. His shot was falling short every time. He looked visibly uncomfortable at times. And I think if Derek Lively wasn't hurt, they wouldn't have played him. Another interesting thing I noticed, and I noticed this pretty much all series, but it was especially bad in Games 4 and 5. The Minnesota Timberwolves never made Luka work off ball when he was on defense. They allowed Luka to conserve his energy on offense. Like, I saw multiple possessions where Luka would be either down low or out on the perimeter with his man, and they were both just standing there. I feel like if you've got Luka on you on defense, you have to be moving around, you have to be going around screens, you have to be forcing him to work, tire him out. You know he's not the best defender, he has improved. But force him to defend, force him to move and get tired, because there were so many possessions where I saw Luka's man standing still and Luka standing still the entire shot clock. He didn't move, or he just barely moved, kind of just back and forth, whatever. And I didn't understand that coaching. That's all coaching. I feel like you need to have him scrambling around. And they were doing that with Kyrie. Kyrie, they had his man moving. He was, doing all sorts of stuff, forcing Kyrie to be constantly running around on defense. But they weren't doing that with Luka, and I didn't understand that. And another thing I noticed is that Gobert kept getting the mismatch down low on Luka in the paint. It happened happened a ton in Game 4. It happened a little bit in Game 5, not as much. But all the times that I saw Gobert have the mismatch on Luka, they only got him the ball like once or twice. And both times, he scored, I'm pretty sure, both times, because Luka was just too small to guard him. I think one time he scored, and one time he went to the line for free throws. But then, like, there were so many times where he would be down there, he'd be in the paint, he'd have Luka guarding him, and the ball handler would not get in the ball, and then he'd have to leave the paint. And I didn't understand that. I'm like, it feels like you should be hunting for that matchup. You know, and Gobert kept getting it. Seeing all this criticism about Gobert, I thought he was doing what he had to do. But it felt like, especially on offense, he was getting iced out a little bit. I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if he was just playing decoy or something. I don't know, just something I noticed is very interesting. But yeah, I mean, last season, the Mavericks missing the playoffs and getting Derek Lively is looking more and more important, because he has just been, I mean, it's night and day. When he's that game he didn't play, you could tell they missed him. Luka and Kyrie did not have another reliable option to take the pressure off when they were getting double teamed on D. Like, for a big man, a good scoring option, like he opens that offense up and lets them work. And you could tell Game 4 they were really getting bothered by the Minnesota defense without him out there, and then he comes back for Game 5 and look what happens. There's a point where they were leading by like 30 points. And a lot of that I have to give the credit to Derek Lively. You know, and I'll admit, like, I didn't expect this to be a sweep. I don't think I kind of really understood how important Derek Lively is to this Mavericks team going into this season. At this trade deadline, I didn't really understand, but watching this series and seeing him and seeing the difference when he's not playing compared to when he is, I'm like, oh, this guy might, in the next handful of years, he might be a top 10 center in the league. Obviously, Jokic and Embiid, they're not going anywhere. Off the top of my head, I know, you know, it's late, I can't think of a ton of centers, but I feel like he could be a top 10 center in a couple of years, just with how important he is. Cat, Gobert, obviously, both of them are really good, but he was scoring on them. He was making them work. This Boston series, what I liked about this Boston series is that Jaylen Brown, I know last playoffs he got a lot of criticism. A lot of people felt like I know there's criticism saying like he can't dribble left, he was being forced to go left and he couldn't like do anything about it. He was missing a lot of, I think he was pretty inefficient last playoffs. So in a way, I'm a Jaylen Brown fan. I like him. It's nice to see him. He had a really big game, Game 4. You know, this Pacers team, like I said, so many parallels, I think. You know, Halliburton goes out, obviously, and then Nembhard came in, and Nembhard, I think he had like 26. I want to say he had a really good game. But it's going to be an interesting thing. If you're the Pacers, what do you do? Do you sell high on Nembhard? Do you pick up his option? It's interesting because I think he's only making like $2-ish million. So you could potentially trade him, bring in a player at a position of need. Because when I look at the Pacers, and I think this is true of the Timberwolves as well, I see a desperate need for bench scoring. Both these teams, I think the Pacers and the Timberwolves, they need more experience for their young guys, mainly. That's the big thing. But I think they need somebody who can come off the bench and give you 16 to 22 points a night off the bench in like 26 minutes. And I think they like a 2-3, like a wing player who can shoot the ball. They're a plus on defense. I mean, not even a plus, they're just not a minus on defense. Like a sort of Bruce Brown type, or something like that. I don't know, like just trying to think like I'm trying to think of a good bench scorer in the league right now. Because Chris Middleton wasn't starting, right? Chris Middleton was coming off the bench, I think, this season when he was healthy. You know, I think they have Naismith as well, but I think you just need to find. And the thing they did not do, they do not trade Miles Turner. I think similar to the Karl Anthony Towns situation, I see a lot of Pacers fans talking about Miles Turner. Do not trade Miles Turner, or you are not going back to an Eastern Conference final. I think that's true of Cat. I think that's true of Miles Turner. Either of those guys gets traded, that team's not going back to the conference final next year. But the Pacers, I think, are in a really interesting spot. I think they can improve this offseason if they move one of their young guys. Personally, I would trade Nembhard. I think it's likely. I don't want to say he regresses. I don't think that's the term. But I think his value right now is sky high. And I think some team... I can't even think of a team. Like, part of me wants to say Atlanta for some reason, just because I know they're thinking of trading Trae Young. And I'm not even saying like Trae Young goes to the Pacers, because I don't think that would work. But a team like Atlanta, a team in the spotlight, trade Nembhard to a team, bring in a guy that can just give you buckets. Like I said, I don't know who that guy is, but I think the Pacers have the pieces now. They're ahead of schedule a little bit. And you don't want to have too many chefs in the kitchen. You have to be like, okay, Halliburton is the guy. You have to pick your guy. Halliburton's the guy. Don't keep guys around that are gonna be challenging him for that position. Have a number 2 guy at his position that's like cemented. If you think Nembhard can eventually like become as good as or close to as good as Halliburton, I'm not even saying he can, but I think you have to get what you can, trade him. I feel like I'm just rambling at this point. This isn't even the point I want to make. I don't know how I ended up here. But don't trade Miles Turner. Trade one of your young guys. Improve. I think the Pacers can get better next year. I think both these young teams can get better next year. Honestly, both the Timberwolves and the Pacers I can see improving as long as they don't make stupid snap decisions reacting to the loss, because both these teams, in my opinion, are ahead of schedule. Neither of these teams were expected to be here this season, which is good news if you're a fan of either of those teams. But yeah, this Boston team, like I said, Jaylen Brown, I like that it wasn't all just Tatum. Now the interesting thing, Porzingis, I know he is hurt. Is he coming back? Because we have a week off. We have a week off before our next series. Porzingis, so 22 hours ago. Yeah, he has not played since the first round against the Miami Heat. Okay, he said that he is planning to play in the finals. You know, they basically had they didn't didn't sweep. No, they didn't sweep all the way here. They lost those games. They lost one game to Miami, one game to Cleveland. So they went there. They're 8-2 coming in. Dallas is, 12-2. Dallas is 12-5. So Dallas has played more games. It's an interesting matchup. I've been saying, basically, all season I think the Boston Celtics are the best team in the NBA. And I still think they are now. Drew Holiday has been a little bit less impactful in these playoffs than I expected him to be. Let me see if I can find his stats actually, because I haven't looked at his playoff stats. Yeah. So it's a mixed bag. So in the Pacers, 4 games against the Pacers. The first game he had 48 minutes, 28 points, 10 for 16 from the field, 3 steals, 8 assists, and rebounds. That's actually a really good game. But in the next game he went 6 for 7, so fewer shots. Really good from 3, 10 assists, 3 rebounds, no steals, no blocks. 14 points in game 3, 17 points in game 4. But both those on not great efficiency. He was really not good in the Cavaliers series. He was so-so against the Heat. I know the big thing for him is his defense. But I don't know, like I said, personally, he's just been a little bit less impactful. Derek White, in my opinion, has been outplaying him most of this series. And looking ahead at this finals matchup, Mavericks versus Celtics. Like I said, I have personally maintained that the Celtics are the best team in the league. This Mavericks team has a little bit of that special something. I don't think Luka's injury is much of an issue anymore, so I'm going to bring that into consideration. Kleber is definitely not at 100%. Now, we do have this week of rest for these teams, but again, that also means Porzingis is coming back. I think Lively is likely better than Porzingis. I'm just trying to think of like our matchups here. I'm just trying to think like player-to-player matchups. It's just tricky. Derek White's been so good these playoffs. I did not realize that. Al Horford's been getting a lot of run, which I don't like. I don't like his odds. I think you need Porzingis in there. I think Al Horford is not a good. I don't think he matches up well against Lively. I mean, your wing play in Boston is definitely better. Tatum, I don't think. It's weird, right? Because these teams, it's almost like I don't think Boston can stop Luka or Kyrie, but I also don't think Dallas can stop Tatum or Brown. And maybe not even Derek White. Dude is on a mission right now. Because here's the thing, right? When I sit down and record these videos, I come into it. I have my notes and whatever else I've taken. But for the most part, I come to these conclusions as I'm sitting here. I try to talk my way through it. Luka is my favorite non-Blazer in the NBA. So that part of me wants him to win. But I maintain that the Celtics team, I think if the Celtics team loses, It's going to be because one of either Tatum or Brown really struggles. And we know Brown last playoffs had his really bad moments. I know Tatum from time to time can have inefficient games or disappear for a game or two in a series. This is hard. My heart says Dallas, my brain says Celtics. How about this? If you're a Mavericks fan, I have literally bet against your team every single series. And they have proven me wrong every time. If you're a Celtics fan, I have chosen your team every single series. And they've proven me right every single time. So I think this Dallas defense is going to be an issue for Boston. I don't think the stars are going to be stopped on either team. I think it's going to come down to the role players and the depth. I think pretty much every game in this series is going to be decided at the end of the fourth quarter. All these games are going to be like 1 to 6 point wins. I don't think we're getting garbage time in any of these games. I think we probably get at least one overtime game. I think, like I said, given my track record of the Mavericks proving me wrong and the Celtics proving me right, I'm going to take the Boston Celtics in 6 games. I think this series goes 6. Why do I think that? Neither of these teams have played a Game 7 these entire playoffs. All of these have ended in 6. At the most. 5 in Boston's case, 6 in Dallas's case. I don't think either of these teams are going to play a Game 7 these playoffs. So I'll take the Celtics in 6. Anyway, guys, let me know what you've thought about these NBA Conference Finals. Who you think is going to win the finals? I know I didn't talk about the East as much, but like I said, I feel like what I said kind of applies equally to both of these teams that lost in these series. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this almost every single day. Until next time, guys.